So this is so exciting. We are here for a special episode of Talking Disney in honor of Mary Poppins Returns. We are not doing a canon film this month, but we are talking about Mary Poppins, and it's going to be so much fun. I am Rachel, and Stanford is here.
Hi.
Thanks so much for coming and talking about Mary Poppins with me.
Oh, thanks for having me on the podcast again. I'm so excited to talk about Mary Poppins too.
Yeah, it is one of the great movies, I think, of all time. It's definitely in my top 20 of favorites of all time. I think it's arguably one of the best family films ever made.
Agreed. And really one of the finest live action films from the Walt Disney Studios too.
Yeah. It's just we'll talk as we go along. We will talk about some of the behind the scenes kind of things, and I certainly think it is one of the best adaptations ever to film. I'm sure P.L. Travers would be outraged if I say that.
Would beg to differ.
I think they took her mediocre books and they made it into a masterpiece, and that's my feeling. And it's so well cast, so well done, very, very few flaws, and we're just going to have so much fun talking about it. Is Mary Poppins something that you grew up watching?
Oh, absolutely. You know, Mary Poppins, I think really my first introduction to Mary Poppins was the music.
Yeah.
My parents really loved music and really bought us just a lot of records, you know, a lot of albums that we would listen to. And the Mary Poppins soundtrack was I remember being heavy in the rotation. It also had a really wonderful case. It was an LP, you know, that ages me. And wow, I think we all loved it in our house. And I remember just loving to look at the pictures. And I can't remember the first time I actually saw the film. But I was a kid when I finally got to see it, and of course, I just loved it. You know, what's not to love?
Yeah, I feel like I was practically raised on Sherman Brothers songs, like whether it's
absolutely.
Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks or Jungle Book or Charlotte's Web. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Yeah. I mean, so many.
Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. Right. They just are the songwriters of our childhoods, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was as connected to them as a child as I was to anything that we sang at church. You know, I Want to Be a Sunbeam or anything like that. Their songs were, I was definitely as connected, if not more so. And I have so many happy memories of not only watching the movies, but like you say, listening to. My case, it was audio cassettes. With the different stories and the different performances and different things like that. And I mean, I there was never a moment where I didn't love Mary Poppins in my life. Like not one of those movies that I had to grow into or that I learned to appreciate, you know, kind of a thing like maybe a Fantasia or something like that I grew to love. This was just always the best.
Yeah. And I never remember it not being a part of my life.
Yeah. You know, you go to Disneyland and the what's it, the Carnation Cafe, I think it's called. The one that's very like feels like Mary Poppins kind of thing. And I mean, a lot of Disneyland feels very Mary Poppins because it's very Walt Disney, and you'd hear the songs, and it's just so much.
I know, and
Disneyland,
and the characters walk around, you know, Bert, Mary Poppins, and it's just so great.
It's the best, and really, there's very little that, as an adult, that I'm looking back and like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm a little concerned about that. We have to talk about that kind of a thing with Mary Poppins. You know,
agreed.
So you have seen, before we dive into the plot of the movie, you've seen Saving Mr. Banks, I assume.
Yes. And I loved Saving Mr. Banks.
Me too.
Absolutely loved that. Saw it multiple times. Yeah.
I loved it as well. I think it is just the script is so beautiful. And I know that some people are like, oh, it's not exactly true or whatever, but there's a lot more truth than some people like to admit. She was extremely difficult, despite the fact that she was given $100,000 and 5% of all proceeds, which basically made a millionaire for her whole life.
Right.
And she felt that Disney had been underhanded because he had promised her final say on the script, but he was kind of tricky because he said that, well, you don't have any say in the editing. And so he basically edited it to be completely what she hated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he was a little tricky with that. But I mean, I think that she was treated a lot better than a lot of other authors are. And
Well, I think so too. And I never got, maybe Mr. Banks was careful with this, but yeah, I don't think she was ever mistreated. In fact, I think, Walt Disney worked for so many years to try to get the rights. I think she sounded so difficult to work with that they were, I thought, pretty smart to actually handle it that way. At least that's how I interpreted it. Like how in the world could they ever get her final approval? They probably couldn't.
Yeah.
And so that was the way to deal with it. And then just to have to deal with her wrath.
I mean, and her main problem was like so unreasonable that she just felt that animation in and of itself was fluffy and kind of demeaning. And so, I mean, obviously as an animation lover, I have problems with that. But like, you signed the deal with Disney.
Walt Disney.
What on earth did you think? She could have signed with BBC or whatever was the equivalent at that time. And, whatever, like she signed the deal. And so I kind of feel like it's really her fault. But the thing that I'm not saying Disney is like a perfect person, but as a corporation leader, I don't know, I just feel like compared to a lot of other authors, like if you compare the way that her work was treated by, let's say, something like Ursula Le Guin, how her books were treated with the Tales of Earthsea, the Studio Ghibli movie, which is just like, or the guy who did the Black Cauldron books, his books were just like, well, I haven't read that book, but from what I've told, there's just like no similarity almost at all.
Right.
No, and he was just like, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
I don't know either. And then you just wonder would P.L. Travers have been happy with anything? If another studio had tried to take your work and maybe even make it more seriously and not making a musical or something, would she have ever been happy?
I don't think so, because
I don't think so either.
From all that I can see, it seems like the Sherman brothers were the nicest people in the world. And Sherman, and they said that I think it was Richard Sherman said that he gets a stomachache even thinking about dealing with her. So I don't know.
I love that.
But it was kind of funny in Saving Mr. Banks that they made the Sherman brothers like, I don't know, they looked like they were like 15. Like, oh.
Yeah.
That was kind of funny to me. But I don't know. I really did love the movie. I loved Paul Giamatti in that movie. I thought that was such a beautiful performance as this driver. I love Emma Thompson. She's wonderful in the movie.
Yeah. She's so good.
I love my favorite part, and this is without hyperbole, one of my favorite just is if I was just looking at just a scene in a movie, this is one of my all-time favorites, is when Disney goes out to see her, and he says to her, he talks about his dad and making him deliver the papers every day, multiple times a day. And he would wake up in the middle of the snow and he'd fallen asleep and all of that. And he says, I don't say this to make you sad. I love my life. I love my dad. He was a good man. And he says, but rare does a day go by that I'm not reminded of that little boy hiding in the snow, delivering papers. And he talks about he's old Elias Disney's belt waiting if you didn't do it. And I just love when he says, Mrs. Travers, I'm tired of remembering it that way. Aren't you tired too, Mrs. Travers?
Mm-hmm.
And when he said that, it was like I cried. Like there's sometimes when I'm a very easy cry in a movie, but I was sobbing crying, not just like tearing up crying, because it just hit me so hard that you need to let go of sometimes there's things in my life, especially at that time, because I was very struggling with a lot of things that had happened in my family, and it was just like I'm tired of remembering it that way. I'm tired of all that pain and remembering it with all that pain, and it was such a beautifully written sequence in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. That's really such a powerful part of that film, and so perfectly done. It's so interesting being able to watch that film as an adult too, and I think understanding life a little more and just seeing how that all worked and came together to just make this absolute masterpiece of a movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive into Mary Poppins. Then everybody should see Saving Mr. Banks. It's great.
Absolutely. Put that on your list. Yeah, if you haven't seen it.
So, all right. So it starts out the movie with Bert talking to us. He breaks the fourth wall, basically.
Yeah, Bert breaks the fourth wall in the first part of the film, which I think is an interesting choice. It works, but an interesting choice. Different.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is a fantasy film, but it's more sort of magical realism, I think. And
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
The movie doesn't spend any time explaining the magic at all, which I really appreciate.
No. Which I like it too. Yeah, I think that's a smart choice.
Yeah, because it would just like kill the whimsy and make it very boring, and like that's one of the problems I often have with fantasy. And honestly, that's part of the problem I have with Harry Potter, is that there's just so much exposition and so much explaining, and so. And they're fine, but I think this is so much better. It's just there. Like they don't bother explaining why Admiral Boom is there. Like why is he having a ship on the top of his house? We don't know. It's just mystical and fun, and it's kind of
so fun.
It's kind of similar to we don't need to know why there's magic in Willy Wonka's factory. It just is because it's Willy Wonka's factory and it's magic. Heavy weather brewing at number 17, and so we get this. We know like that's such a nice sort of lead in to the world of the banks and the story and the way the camera kind of zooms in towards the house. I think it really works.
I think it really works too. And I got to tell you, Rachel, one of my favorite things in all the world is that movie set of 17 or of just a Cherry Tree Lane. I remember even as a child, because I think even in my child brain, I knew, I mean, it just looked like a set, but it was so beautiful and so wonderful. Like it just felt so real, even though you knew it wasn't, but it's so cool to see it. And then when I was able to tour the Disney Studio lot on one of these D23 things that I've done in the past, I can't remember the exact soundstage. They have, what they called it. They've named it the Julie Andrews soundstage, but it's one of the sound stages that they filmed Mary Poppins on. And just to think that, oh my gosh, this was all made there in urban California is so cool. It's just so cool.
That's amazing. I didn't realize they had that. That's so cool.
Yeah, that set was all done there on the Disney Studio lot. I think both the interior and the exterior, But there's something just so special, I think, about that street. That goes in front of the Banks house and Admiral Boom's house and then over to the park. I love it. And just how, the street and everything about it.
Immediately have this combination of whimsy and sort of this maturity to it also. Immediately you know that there's problems and that the storms are brewing, heavy weather,
storms are brewing.
But it's so that, I don't know, this movie has so many more layers than a movie like this should have. I mean, you and I watched The Happiest Millionaire, for example. And it has many of the same,
it's more like it.
It has many of the same overall sort of elements, right?
Yeah, it does.
But it just is it's just not even close, and it just doesn't
Yeah,
work.
it's not even close. It just didn't
Yeah.
have the whimsy and the magic, and even the supernatural things didn't necessarily need to happen in the Happiest Millionaire. But yeah, there's just something so missing in it where that Mary Poppins just has in spades.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the music is so great. The Sherman Brothers did such a wonderful job with the
Wow.
score.
They just completely aced it. Yeah. And Erwin Kostel and his beautiful orchestrations, of the music. It's just, oh, God, so great. As I mentioned, that's the same thing. Same with the record, as I mentioned, listening to that album growing up. I just could listen to it over and over and over again.
You know who I also love you see throughout many Disney films is Hermione Baddeley and Rita Shaw as the cook and maid.
And that's so fun. Yeah, and then there they are in that very opening, when we finally get into the Banks house there in that opening scene, there they are. And I agree with you. They're terrific, and they're so good in this film.
They're a delight. I love them in, or at least I know that Rita Shaw is, I think they're both in Pollyanna, I believe. But I know Rita Shaw is. Yeah. And I love Pollyanna. They're just in a ton, and they're just delightful, and they're so funny. And I don't know what it would have been like.
They're really funny. Yeah, perfect.
So with the first song that we get, we see Glynis Johns play as the mother.
Yeah.
And we get Sister Suffragette. It's the first song in the movie. What do you think of Mrs. Banks? Do you like her, or do you think she's kind of the worst?
I saw that you posed that question on Twitter, and I wanted to talk to you about that.
Yes.
It's kind of like a combo, I think, actually, because I think at her core, she's a really, of course, just a great woman. I mean, she's a very good woman, right? I mean, she's very devoted to this cause that she's doing, and I think, like when Katie Nana is, lead the parts, and she's there with Mr. Banks, and Mr. Banks is, going on and on about his perfect household and the perfect nanny that he's going to personally hire, and then the children come in with their list. She's the one who insists that the children talk, and I think that's one of the few points of good parenting that you see from her in the movie. Otherwise, I mean, both mom and dad are distracted, even though there is more focus on Mr. Banks.
Yeah.
I think both of them are really distracted.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if she's necessarily the worst, because I think she's trying to care about her kids. However, she's off. She's really letting the household help take care of them. What's your take, and what did you hear from your Twitter poll? I did ask
on Twitter. I don't have the actual votes tallies in front of me at the moment, but I think that in general people were giving her a little bit of a break. She just will. I think it just struck me this time watching it is that she will put her kids with anybody rather than watch her kids.
Yeah, she's not into it. Yeah.
She's almost looking outside, wait, you, somebody else watch me, rather than having her watch it.
Then have her take the responsibility.
I mean, she has Bert, a chimney sweep she's never met, watching her kids. But I mean, she's certainly sweet enough, and it is fun to see, the suffragette. They did in the Broadway musical, they took it out and put in a song called "Be Mrs. Banks," which was
that's right. I remember, because I've seen the Broadway show too, and that's right. And I like the Sister Suffragette song, and I just think that it really is it's a really good introduction to what Mrs. Banks is all about. Yeah. And I really like Glynis Johns anyway, and I really like her in this role. And so I think that maybe I cut her a little more slack just because. And that's not necessarily fair, but I cut her a little slack just because I just find her such an appealing actress, particularly in this movie.
Yeah, she can be absolutely hilarious. One of her last roles is she was in While You Were Sleeping as the grandma, I love
wasn't she the best? I was so happy that, when she came on the screen, it's oh my gosh, I didn't know that Glynis Johns was even still alive. Which is rude to say,
Oh, they're She's like, let him do it. I am letting him do it. So
Oh, she was so
I
she was
love
so perfect. She was
I
so
love
perfect in
her
that.
and Jack Warden in that movie. I think they're so funny.
Yeah, it's so
But
good.
anyway, yeah, so she's just kind of she's just kind of flaky. She's not the best, but she's not the worst. I'll grant her that. But then we get the life I lead from Mr. Banks, where he's talking about his perfectly ordered world, how he's got everything under control. What do you think is sort of the character arc of Mr. Banks in this movie? What do you think that he starts out, things are all in control. By the end, things are completely out of control. What do you
Yeah.
think is the character journey for Mr. Banks?
Well, I think Mr. Banks is solely focused on himself and on his career. He's a workaholic basically, and as well as he's got this quote unquote ordered life. But really, from the beginning of when we see it, his life's not in order. His family's a mess. The kids keep running the nannies out of the house. And I don't think Jane and Michael are brats. I think Jane and Michael need a mom and dad, and they don't have a mom and dad. I mean, they do, but they don't. They're provided for. But so I think with Mr. Banks, his character arc, for the way I interpret it, is he really has to understand what's truly important in life, and it's his family. It's his wife and it's kids. And Mary Poppins knows that, and she has to come help him figure that out. But
Yeah,
that's how I interpret it. How do you interpret it?
he learns to be a better human being, a better person. He learns what really matters in his family. I don't know. It's just such a contrast. It's so interesting to look at the difference between the life I lead and and A Man Has Dreams at the end,
Yeah,
especially what
yeah,
Bert says, at the end, when you're a man of high position, esteemed by your peers. When your little tykes are crying, you haven't time to dry their tears and see them grateful little faces smiling up at you because their dad always knows just what to do. You got to grind, grind, grind at that grindstone. Their childhood slips like sand through a sieve, and all too soon they've grown up, and then they've flown, and it's too late for you to give just that spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down, So that's kind of where we end. But in this first part, he says, he talks about, I run my home precisely on schedule. At 6:01, I
yeah,
march through my door. My slippers,
yeah,
sherry, and pipe are due at 6:02. Consistent is the life I lead. It's grand to be an
yeah.
Englishman in 1910. King Edward's on the throne. It's the age of men. I'm the lord of my castle, the sovereign, the liege. I treat my subjects, servants, children, wife with a firm but gentle hand. Noblesse oblige. It's 6:03, and the heirs to my dominion are scrubbed and tubbed and adequately fed. And it keeps going. And the thing is that none of the things that he mentions in this perfect life that he set up provide happiness or joy.
Yeah, it's just a schedule. It's all
Yeah.
about this schedule, and again, and it's all about him. He's talking about
Yes.
these other people, but the way I view it is just like this is about him. He's there drinking his sherry and smoking his pipe. He's providing for his family, but he's not caring. He's not caring about them. He's just
Yeah.
they're adequately fed and sent to bed. It's not that or close. However that specific rhyme goes.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm just gonna spend time with my kids and I'm gonna help them with their schoolwork or or we're gonna go spend some time together
Or
or something.
find out who they are or what they want or anything. And
Yeah.
even if you wanted a house that was disciplined and rules, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but those things should be just sort of tools to then having great experiences and having more happiness in life. Those things in and of themselves are not happiness. It's kind of like if you have a beautifully set table, that's good, but it's not going to make you have a delicious
Right.
meal.
Right.
So it's really interesting.
One of the things I've noticed it before, but with this rewatch, how he's going, that opening song, about the life he leads. Mrs. Banks the whole time is just trying to tell him, the children are missing. The children are missing, and he's not having any of it. He's not paying attention. And again, that's why I just think this dude is so self-consumed
Yeah.
Even with his wife, who also, as we know, she's got issues, still, she's at least trying to say, George, dear,
Yeah.
the children are gone. The children are
Yeah, I mean,
and yeah.
if you look at the contrast between his dreams, I guess, and the kids' dreams, they have the Perfect Nanny, their song, when they write the letter. Almost all their stuff is actually stuff that like feeds the soul. Is what I'm trying. As opposed to just like order, and
exactly.
they say the perfect nanny wanted a nanny for two adorable children. If you want this choice position, have a cheery disposition, rosy cheeks, no warts, play games, all sorts. You must be kind, you must be witty, very sweet and fairly pretty. Take us on outings, give us treats, sing songs, bring sweets. Never be cross or cruel, never give us castor oil or gruel. Love us as a son and daughter, and never smell of barley water. If you if you won't scold and dominate us, we will never give you cause to hate us. Which I like the line. We won't hide your spectacles so you can't see. Put toads in your bed or pepper in your tea. Hurry, nanny. Many thanks. Sincerely, Jane and Michael Banks.
Jane and Michael Banks. And is that like the cutest scene ever? I mean, I just seriously, Jane and Michael Banks, they are so cute to me. They're such cute child actors anyway. But I've seen, they were in, Rachel, I'm drawing Thomasina, and they were cute in Thomasina, but nothing as cute as Mary Poppins. I didn't think. Part of it was maybe just the writing and the characters. And the costumes are so great in Mary Poppins too. They look so cute.
Yeah, I got to go to a lecture, whatever panel, I guess, at D23 where they had Karen Dotrice.
Oh, that's right, because Karen Dotrice is still with us.
She was amazing. She was so funny. She was hilarious. I loved her.
Oh, cool. You got to hear her.
I know. It was incredible.
Did she talk about Mary Poppins? I mean, just like,
she talked
making the movie.
She talked about Mary Poppins. She talked about, working with Walt and remembering that. And I'd have to look over my D23 notes to remember everything, but I just remember just laughing that she was such a funny lady, just a delight. She's great. And they really are just lovely child actors, both of them. And they really felt like brother and sister.
They did. It really, I mean, that part of it too, it seems so believable. Even from watching it as a child, I mean, I knew they were actors. Oh, they were good. Matthew Garber had a sad life, I think, didn't he? And he died young.
I think he died in his teens, I believe, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was late teens, I think. Yeah. Sad.
But I think Karen Dotrice is a Disney legend, if I'm not mistaken. So
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I bet you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, the next day we get the great scene with all of the nannies outside.
Oh my gosh! See again, another great use of that incredible set.
Yeah. And I
love that scene so much.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Simpsons take on Mary Poppins? It's pretty funny. Mary Poppins.
Or if I have, I forgot. I bet it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's pretty, I don't know what season, if it's like 9 or 10, 8, 9 or 10 is pretty good. Mary Poppins. Anyway, so all of the nannies are swift away in the wind.
They're blown away with a big wind.
And there, Mary Poppins comes down with her umbrella, Julie Andrews. And it's really amazing because Julie Andrews was, of course, discovered as Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady on Broadway. And a lot of people were upset that she was not cast to play Eliza Doolittle in the movie. But that Audrey Hepburn was. And I've heard her speak, and she said that she never would have even thought of that. Like that was really the furthest thing from her mind, because Audrey Hepburn was the star. She hadn't even been in a movie before, I don't believe. And so then she ends up getting the role of Mary Poppins, which she would not have gotten if she was in My Fair Lady. So
My Fair Lady, which is interesting to think about, isn't it? Because as much I adore My Fair Lady, and I think Audrey Hepburn does a credible job, although she's not singing. Her voice was dubbed in most of the music. Still, how could Julie Andrews not be Mary Poppins?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who else is even being considered, but didn't she get a best actress?
Yeah. My
that
Fair
year?
Lady
Yeah.
ended up winning Best Picture, and Julie Andrews won for Mary Poppins, which is really amazing.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
It was a pretty good year for the Oscars because obviously My Fair Lady and Peter Ustinov
What a
won
year.
that year. She's just so amazing. And it breaks my heart that we live in a world where Julie Andrews can't sing anymore. Like that just is like
And it's sick and wrong.
It's so sad.
Yeah, I'm so grateful we've got these films that really show off her gorgeous voice.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big part of it. I mean, because she's such an appealing actress, such a wonderful singer. Even though, Mary Poppins is kind of like not necessarily the most likable character, right?
Right.
Because
That's what I was
Julie
going to ask
Andrews, you just love her. You just love it.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think that they're able to sort of walk that line? Because I think the books are way less successful at that. I think the books are just kind of, I don't know, they're just not whimsical. They're not fun, and they're kind of preachy, and they're not good. I don't like the books. Mm-hmm. And I mean, granted, I saw the movie first, and so maybe I was biased, but I don't know. I just think they're way better. This movie is way better than these kind of mediocre, forgettable books.
I think it's Julie. I mean, probably again a lot of factors. There's not the cast is perfection in the film. Right. Yeah. Maybe it's a combination of Julie Andrews' performance and then both the screenwriters and the Sherman brothers, because she comes across as snobby and kind of arrogant, but then, you see that she really cares about these people.
Yeah, I think and this was her debut, which is amazing.
Okay.
And
amazing.
And I think in many ways, for a lot of us at least, that she's kind of the perfect mother in a way. Between this and Sound of Music, it's just, you just immediately just love her.
Double whammy, yeah.
And she does such a good job. I love the fact that she's kind of she's firm, but she has that magic. She tells Michael right away, "Close your mouth, Michael. We are not a codfish." And yet she's singing about spoonfuls of sugar and stuff like that. So there's always that sort of whimsy. And I think it's in a way sort of similar to Willy Wonka in the sense that Willy Wonka is kind of the same way.
He's kind of mysterious and scary.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah, I agree.
At the same time, I never find Mary Poppins scary, but she's strict and kind of proud.
That's a good word. Proud.
Yeah.
Proud. She's just the best. So you get the delightful scene of her in her bag, and that's where you get that whimsy right away. And I love that. I love all of it. I love
that scene.
Going underneath the table, trying to figure it out. And she's it's
so cute.
Yeah. She's just very straight about it. She's not winking at the camera. She's very just of course I'm going to get my hat rack. Of course I'm going to.
The hat rack, the mirror, that she pulls out. But the mirror that also is that extra version of her, lives in there or whoever.
I much prefer seeing all of my face at one time.
Yeah.
She's got the plant, the light fixture, shoes. There's a small mirror, a coat, and a tape measure.
And right before that, she slides up the banister too. And I think that whole sequence, they were such technical wizards at Disney, and they were so on top of their game because these special effects are so good and so fun. All the different camera tricks and all the different things that they were using, they add to the whimsy of it. And you kind of, you wonder how did they do that? It's just adds so much to the storytelling, just makes it so delightful.
Yeah, I love when she's never judged things by appearance, even carpet bags. I'm sure I never did.
I know. And the tape measure, when she's measuring the kids, and I always love when she gets to her height, and it's Mary Poppins practically perfect in every way.
Yeah, and you gotta wonder what's the one thing she's not for that? I don't know, but yeah, Jane is rather inclined to giggle, doesn't put things away, and Michael is extremely stubborn and suspicious.
Yeah,
So
it's so fun. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
I love that.
So then we get Spoonful of Sugar. Like I even say the name and I'm like, Spoonful of Sugar. I like want
Right. I
to
mean,
spoon
instantly you hear
it.
that music in your head, and again, it's just the most fun scene because it's just like, wouldn't that be the most wonderful thing to be able to clean? Snap your finger
Yeah.
and your room gets cleaned.
Yeah.
This
It's
mess you made. Well, and I don't mean to read too much into it, but it's a great way to introduce this kid's relationship with Mary Poppins because it's like whatever disorder was going on in their life, their lives are in order for the time being.
yeah. That's a good
You
point.
know,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So
yeah,
then we get
with her.
we get the next day. Bert is working as a pavement artist, and this is when they go inside the drawing, and we get this.
Oh, which is one of my favorite
Oh,
scenes.
it's so good. It's pretty long. I didn't write down how long that scene is, but it is pretty
Yeah,
long.
it's a long time. I mean, what is it? A good 20 plus minutes?
At least because you got the whole Jolly
Yeah.
Holiday sequence.
Jolly Holiday, then
You
that
have
whole horse race
horse
thing,
race, and then
and then
supercalifragilistic.
supercalifragilistic. Yeah.
It's a jolly holiday with Mary. I mean, it's just so delightful. It's so
I
good.
know. I mean, sorry. All I'm doing is speaking in superlatives. But that scene, though, is I think it's just so well done because, and again, the music's great. And then the performances, it just really shines on both of them, particularly Dick Van Dyke. But again, such wonderful technical wizardry, too, because of course, the animation that's so expertly done. I just love how, at some point they're flying in the air and all those different things going on with the choreography.
Yeah.
Just make it so fun.
It is, and you got the penguins, which is so iconic, and that beautiful animation. And I don't know, a lot of people are really, really hard on Dick Van Dyke on his accent, but
I don't even care.
I don't either. A lot of also sort of are Mary and Bert supposed to be in love? And I don't really feel like they're supposed to be in love. I don't know. I think they're fond of each other, and maybe if it was another time, another situation, maybe, but I don't think they're in love.
I never thought that they were in love either. I just thought, maybe if the situation was different because Mary Poppins kind of floats in and out as needed. She's not around given the nature of her work, right?
Right.
And Bert knows that. And so they can enjoy each other's company. Yeah, I like that. And they're fond of each other. But it's a bit flirtatious.
Yeah, that's a good word.
But to me, it never seems like that they're sad about it. They just kind of enjoy the moment. Yeah. And then Mary Poppins is off, and Bert's kind of wistful about that, too.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to say it. It's sort of flirtatious, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we get supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And
which is so fun.
Yeah, and there's a great scene in Saving Mr. Banks when she's.
I know. That's exactly what I thought about too. About Saving Mr. Banks
because they have a rhyme responsible, and he's like, he's like, well, we decided to make up the word. And she's like, unmake it up, and then he's putting away supercalifragilistic so nobody will see it. It's so fun. You get the different characters because I was afraid to speak when I was just a lad. Me father gave me nose a tweak and told me I was bad. But then one day I learned the word and saved me aching nose, the biggest word you ever heard. And this is how it goes. So fun.
And the dancing and again, I just love all the animation. Yeah.
And the costumes are so fun. I love Mary in that white dress with the red.
Oh yeah, and Bert in that striped jacket. Yeah, I think that's often how the two of them are dressed when they're the walk-around characters at Disneyland. Again, so iconic.
You even get the callback at the end when Mr. Banks says to Mr. Daz, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and so that there's always something to say when things are hard. You can always say supercalifragilistic. Yeah. If something's quite atrocious, if you say it loud enough, you'll always sound precocious. Then it starts to rain, and so they end up out of the drawing. Then she sings Stay Awake, a lullaby to them.
Yeah, what do you think about how, when the kids are just so excited and talking about the day, and Mary Poppins almost denies that it happened?
Yeah.
What's your take on that, or your interpretation on what Mary Poppins is trying to do there?
I don't know. I think she's just, I'm not sure. That's just maybe part of the whimsy in some way of it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this secret thing that that only they have, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I know that in other viewings too. It doesn't necessarily bother me, but I just have wondered, like, I wonder why she does that. But maybe part of it is to kind of keep the kids maybe guessing
Yeah.
about
They're
it,
not going to tell
or
anybody because they know she's going to deny it.
yeah, that they're not going to
Yeah.
necessarily tell, and then maybe it helps kind of lessen the sting when she goes away, because she knows that this is all temporary, where the kids might not necessarily know, or shouldn't know. Shouldn't
Yeah.
have that burden to know that this happiness is even though they're off to another type of happiness, but kind of this magical whimsy stuff is not going to be forever.
Right. And then you see the cook and Ellen singing supercalifragilisticexpialidocious just later on, and you get another scene with them trying to hold everything up for the cannons. And I love the little moment when Mary Poppins speaks dog.
Oh, I know.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's really cute. And then we get to meet Uncle Albert.
Yes. Played by the great Ed Wynn.
Yeah.
It's so fun to see that scene. And again, Mary Poppins acts kind of weird, I think, in this, but it all works.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
She's so mad. She's like, don't laugh, even though you think, I don't know, it's like, do you really not want them to laugh?
Yeah, and for whatever reason, when you laugh in this world, it makes you float, which is really fun and whimsical.
Which is so correct, so great. And yeah, they're so worried about Uncle Albert. Like, this is so horrible that he's Uncle Albert's basically on the ceiling. Yeah. I love how they they end up having tea.
Yeah.
Floating in the air.
It's so fun. And they get back home, and Mr. Banks is very upset. And he tells them at high time they learn the seriousness of life, and you get a reprise of Life I Lead. And she kind of tricks them into agreeing to take Jane and Michael to the bank the next day. They're convinced that their father doesn't love them, and she sings Feed the Birds. And from what I've read, I believe that this was Walt Disney's favorite song.
Yeah, that's what I've read too. At least the Sherman Brothers have talked about that, and how Walt would call him into his office and they'd play the song for him.
And it is a beautiful melody.
Well, it is such a beautiful song, and it's such a beautiful sequence in the film, because it's like you're going into that snow globe she has, that she has at St. Paul's Cathedral, and there's some kind of surrealism about it. It's the imagery of the birds, and then the bird lady there on the steps. It's so beautiful. It's pretty deep. The segment is pretty deep, and I was trying to think back as a kid. I was like, did I understand any of this when I was a child?
No.
What was going on here? I don't think I did.
But you needed kind of a breather as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's what's great about this movie, is that it has these different levels that you can enjoy it. And, as an adult, it just gets more and more moving the more I watch it. And, it's really interesting to look at the difference between Feed the Birds and the Fidelity Fiduciary Bank song that comes up next when they're visiting the bank, about when you deposit tuppence in the bank account. Soon you'll see that it blooms into credit of a generous amount semi-annually, and you'll achieve that sense of stature as your influence expands to the high financial strata that established credit now commands. And none of it is about people at all. Like, none of it's aside from making you feel stature, whereas Feed the Birds is all about this woman and connecting with people and
caring for someone, and really doing something that's outside of yourself.
Yeah, the whole song is about caring. Come feed the little birds, show them your care, and you'll be glad if you do. Their young ones are hungry, their nests are so bare. all it takes is tuppence from you. Feed the birds. So it's really
it's a song about
contrast.
charity. It's such an interesting contrast. Again, kudos to the Sherman Brothers and to this Mary Poppins creative team, for really making that very interesting juxtaposition with those two different worlds.
Yeah. Well, and so when they go to the bank, Michael wants to give his tuppence to the bird lady. And
the bird lady, yeah.
Yeah. And then Mr. Dawes, who is played by Dick Van Dyke in old makeup, he basically takes his money, his tuppence, and he's, then he sings the song, Michael starts kind of screaming, and this starts a whole run on the bank, which is a horrible thing to happen.
Yeah, causes people to misinterpret what's happening, and they run off. Now, did you happen to see? There's a lot of interviews and press going on with Mary Poppins Returns, of course, and how Dick Van Dyke is playing now the role of Dawes Jr., but as an old man. I think he actually was being interviewed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I think I saw this on Facebook or something. But Walt Disney had someone else playing Dawes Sr., and Dick Van Dyke really wanted the role, to dress. And Dick Van Dyke had to pay Walt Disney to do the role. He said he had to pay Walt Disney $4,000 in order for him to let him. I don't know quite how the whole business deal worked, but it's out. It's out there with the Mary Poppins Returns press stuff on any one of the Disney social media things. But I thought that was really interesting that wasn't part of the initial plan. Who knows who was going to play him?
Yeah. Well, they end up running away, Jane and Michael, and they run into Bert, who is a chimney sweep this day. And I love this whole scene between them and Bert. And
oh my gosh.
And Bert says, "Let's sit down, begging your pardon. But the one my heart goes out to is your father. There he is in that cold, heartless bank day after day, hammed in by mounds of cold, heartless money. I don't like to see any living thing caged up." Jane says, "Father in a cage?" Bert says, "They make cages of all sizes and shapes, bank-shaped, some of them, carpets and all." And then Jane says, "Father's not in trouble. We are." "Oh, sure about that, are you? Look at it this way. You've got your mother to look after you, and Mary Poppins, and Constable Jones, and me. Who looks after your father? Tell me that. When something terrible happens, what does he do? Fends for himself, he does. Who does he tell about it? No one. Don't blab his troubles at home. He just pushes on at his job, uncomplaining, alone, and silent. Michael, he's not very silent. and Jane, Michael, be quiet. Bert, do you think father really needs our help? Well, it's not my place to say. I only observe that a father can always do with a bit of help. Come on, I'll take you home. I love that scene. It is so good.
Yeah. Well, it's so good. And, it really illustrates the point that we were talking about with Mr. Banks' character and really talking about what's going on with him. And I think Bert explains it in a way that a kid can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love it.
A father can always do with a bit of help. But it's such a good lesson for children to learn that we shouldn't just judge people, that they don't need help, that they don't need love, that we should try to see our parents as people. And that's such a hard thing when you're a kid, because
it's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah. Michael at one point says, "You should have seen the look on his face. He doesn't like us at all." And that is such a childhood thing, that you think your parents hate you because they're trying to keep you safe, or because they're stressed out about their lives. And I think a lot of us have that moment when we realize that, oh my gosh, my parents are just like me. Like they're just trying to figure this out as they go day by day. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so this is when the mother leaves the kids to Bert. I'm like, oh dear. And they get sucked up the chimney. And that's when we get Chim Chimmery and Step in Time, which, I would say that Step in Time is got to be in the conversation for one of the 10 best choreographed dance numbers in the history of television.
It's so impressive. It's so energetic and it's so beautifully choreographed, so beautifully filmed, so much fun technical wizardry going on as they're jumping and bouncing, from building to building. I think it looks like there's a lot of matte painting and other different things that were techniques that were being used. One of my favorite sequences too is in that Step in Time is when there's like 10 or 15 chimneys on the screen and it's all done in silhouette. And, the chimney sweeps are like dancing on top of the chimneys. Just look so cool. Gets that blue background of the sky. And I love it. So much artistry, so much creativity going on there.
And this whole sequence was choreographed by Mark Breaux, Breaux, and his wife, Dee Dee Wood, were the ones that choreographed it. And they just did a phenomenal job. They did a really amazing job. So
the choreography, I've always loved that set, too, that chimney top set. I don't know what you call it, because there's that big fun place where they dance, but they're just dancing on every surface, on all. It's really iconic.
He and Dee Dee Wood also choreographed Sound of Music and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, okay.
So, pretty amazing.
There they are on these big, wonderful 1960s musicals. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Then so that's.
And Chim Chim Tree is one of my favorite songs, too. I just have to throw that in.
Yeah. And that was the one that won the Oscar.
So
it's so good. And, Mary Poppins, she says, I never explain anything.
Yeah.
What she does. And that's when we get A Man Has Dreams. And so because Mr. Banks finds out that he's probably going to get fired, he has to go up to the
back to the bank.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, vulnerable moment, and I just love that they allowed he and Bert to be together in that moment. I think works so well. Bert says, "You're a man of eye position, esteemed by your peers, and when your little tykes are crying, you haven't time to dry their tears. And see them grateful little faces smiling up at you because their dad always knows just what to do. You've got to grind, grind, grind at that grindstone. Though childhood slips like sand through a sieve, and all too soon they've grown up, and then they've flown, and it's too late for you to give just that spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down." I love that, just that grind, grind, grind at that grindstone is it's such good writing.
Well, it is. And I just find it fascinating that really both Mary Poppins and Bert know what's going on. And they're the ones helping Mr. Banks see things in a different light.
Yeah.
And or at least planting a seed,
because it's not that he's working that's the problem, and that's what so many movies that try to do this whole businessman forgot his family kind of arc, they forget that it's not the work that's the problem, it's what he finds value in his life. And it's like, my dad, he could be working 70, 80 hours a week, huge hours, but I knew that was not his priority. That he got his value from his faith and from his family and from his scouting activity, all that other stuff. Like, it's not that he hated work or anything like that, but that's not what got his nourishment. That's not what he got happiness from. And if you look at The Life I Lead at the beginning, all of the happiness is from stuff that does not last and stuff that does not matter in the grand scheme of things. All of it. And so I think that it's such a humbling moment for a character and such a moving moment between both characters, between Bert and Mr. Banks. And it's just so great. And it's so often done wrong.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And he takes that. And David Tomlinson, we haven't talked about him, but he's phenomenal.
Oh, my stars. David Tomlinson. I mean, he is phenomenal, and what a brilliant performance he gives in this movie. Because he's such a good actor. He's quite a good singer, I think, too. Yeah, and he kind of does that combo of the sing that Rex Harrison does in My Fair Lady. That same sort of style. I mean, that's how they wrote. I'm sure that's how the Sherman Brothers wrote the music for him to do that. But he's so good. He's so convincing in this role. Yeah,
Because he
perfect.
has those lighter moments where he's singing that are really great, and he's great in the role. And when he's sort of making this long walk to the
Yes, I was
bank,
going to talk about the
oh,
walk to the bank.
so
This is
good.
the coolest sequence because again, I think so much of it's done with matte paintings. They're not filming.
Yeah.
He's not in London. I just love the artistry of how the filmmakers did that. Again, just with this wonderful music going on, and with him really thinking about his fate, because everything that he's worked for, everything that's been important to him, he knows is getting taken away.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's stuff that didn't last. It's
Yeah.
building your house on the foundation of sand. It's getting
And
washed away.
when he finally gets into the room where Dawes Jr. and Senior are, the other partners in the bank, I love how they have that room it's all black, and how they positioned the table kind of in the top corner of the screen. So it almost just looks like he's like going to the judgment bar, but
Yeah.
done so artistically
Yeah,
interesting, in
true.
such an artistically interesting way. It's not like they just opened the door and there's the set. They did some cool stuff with some special effects.
Yeah, I love when he says supercalifragilistic, and he says to them, he says, "There's no such thing as you," which I love.
And Dawes Jr. really humiliates him there, by folding out his umbrella and punching a hole in his hat and ripping
Right.
his lapel flower in half and stuff. But that kind of works for him to look a little disheveled, because really he's in the process of being a changed man.
Yeah, and that's
think.
when Mr. Dawes ends up laughing, and you see
Right.
he's beginning to float.
He tells one of the dad
the
jokes.
jokes. Yeah. That's right. I forgot about the joke.
Yeah, that's what makes Dawes Senior laugh, and
Yeah.
again he starts to float, and that was just again in a perfect way, because he just starts to float, but they don't really dwell on it. But that is brought back into the story, Mr. Dawes floating and Dawes Senior.
Yes, and then he goes home and joins the family for flying the kite, and we get "Let's go fly a kite up," and it's so fun. It's just great, and
that whole set, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I love it, and
Saving Mr. Banks makes that scene even more meaningful, I think, too. That'll for people who haven't seen that yet, too. You gotta watch Saving Mr. Banks as an accompaniment to Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
But that whole scene, Rachel, are you first? Sorry, I keep
No.
after you.
I mean, I was just gonna say that they bring back the kite, I think, in nice ways in the sequel. I liked.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole "Let's Fly" crisis was. I mean, I think I loved the song as a kid. So catchy and so fun. As an adult, and maybe it was also after seeing Saving Mr. Banks, but as an adult, I have a whole different appreciation for it.
Me too.
There's a shot, and I think it was in that LP book that I just used to just devour all the time when I listened to the record, of the family, Mr. and Mrs. Banks and Jane and Michael. They're flying the kite, and Mr. Banks, his collar is kind of out of place, and he's got the hole in his hat, but they're smiling and they're together, and it's just like the family is back together. Mm-hmm. And I always loved that picture as a kid, and I never really, again, maybe subliminally I understood it, but probably not. I was just a little kid, but I see that image now, and I just get emotional, just because I just think, wow, this is what the movie's all about. And Mary Poppins knew it, because she's viewing this from afar. You see again some wonderful acting from Julie Andrews, because that's when I feel like she, Mary Poppins is looking at this scene happily and longing, there's just happily about it. There's knowing that this happens. But she's also, I think, sad that she has to leave, because she cares. I think she cares about all of them. She cares about the children, but I think she really cares about the parents, too, particularly Mr. Banks.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And, we see her leaving, and it's just, I really think that this movie, it's no wonder this was a dream of Walt Disney's, because it really captures, I think, what made him special, Walt Disney, that he was trying to bring people together, to get them to dream to be families together, to have adventures together, to dream of a better world. That's the whole point of things like Epcot and stuff like that. And he was just such an amazing man. And so it's appropriate that this movie is really kind of one of his crowning achievements for sure.
Oh, absolutely, Rachel, because I'm with you. I think it's really kind of the creative apex, I think, in so many ways of Walt Disney's career, because everything about the film was just, I think, everything that he was trying to present in life. A really solid and an incredibly entertaining family film, but that has a lot of meaning in it, but also has a lot of really wonderful technical wizardry.
Yeah.
Incredible animation. Again, ultimately, but a film about a family coming together.
Yeah, it's about what matters in life. It's so good. Great songs. It's just one of the best, one of my all-time favorites. So there we go. Yeah. Let us know what you love about Mary Poppins in the comments section or on Twitter, and what we've had to say. Give us some of your feedback. We'd love to hear. And thank you so much, Stanford. This was such a delight to get to talk.
Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for the invitation, Rachel. It was wonderful to talk about this great film with you. Thank you.
How can people find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Stanford Clark, and I have a movie blog and podcast. You can find that at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube, so make sure to check that out. I haven't actually done my video review of Mary Poppins Returns. We've
seen Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We loved it so much.
Loved it. It's really good.
Yeah, it's so good. So anyway, let us know what you think of that. I will get that up as soon as I can. I'm a little overwhelmed in Hallmark movies at the moment, but doing my best. So let us know what you think. And thanks so much. And we will. I need to do real quick pick out for next month.
Oh, that's right. Is it time to bring out the number generator?
Yes. Where is my number generator? Okay, my number, I got 48. So we'll be talking about Bolt for January. So I look forward to that. And thanks again. And we'll talk again next month. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.